Welcome everyone to our December Council meeting. I declare the meeting open and call for apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Williamson, Councillor Derrick and Councillor Irving. Are there any further apologies? That being the case, someone happy to move those apologies. Those councillors be granted leave of absence. Thank you, Councillor Thursby, Councillor Walker. Put that, all those in favour. Against, carried. Moving on to the minutes of the October meeting, wasn't it? Wasn't November? Moving on to the minutes of the October meeting. Is someone happy to move the minutes of those meetings? Councillor Beach, second. Councillor Drews. Haven't got any business writing for those minutes, do we? No. So that's something we have a mover in a second. No comments, questions before we put that. That being the case, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving to disclosure of interest. Are there any councillors who feel it in their interest to disclose some interest, pecuniary or otherwise, in any matters in the business paper? I note there are no disclosures of interest. Moving on to item 5 on our business paper, that being the mayoral minutes. The first of those is I'm happy to move that in accordance with provisions of Section 377 of the Local Government Act 1993, authority be delegated to the Interim General Manager, Stephen Glenn, to perform the functions of Council in that capacity as Interim GM. I'm moving that. I don't need a seconder, apparently, which I wasn't overly aware of.
You can if you would like.
I'm happy to have a seconder. Councillor Taylor, please. Councillor, this is just in accordance with keeping ourselves in line with the Local Government Act. We need to, as is normal practice, have the General Manager with delegated authority to perform the functions of General Manager of the Council, and this is just keeping us all in line with the Local Government Act. So any further comment, questions before we put that? That being the case, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. My second item is, second minute, is that free entry be provided to the Warren War Memorial Swimming Pool until the end of the school holidays, and that season ticket holders be offered a pro rata reduction in the cost of their season tickets. I would like a seconder to that. I'm going to ask for a seconder for all my general minutes. Please, Councillor Drews. Thank you. To that, I think we've had a difficult time bringing the pool up to scratch. As an act of goodwill to our community, I think it's a very reasonable thing to offer them free entry until the close of the school holiday period in January 21. I think it indicates that Council realises the inconvenience that's been placed on the community, and I think it's just a reasonable and fair thing to do on behalf of our community. The financial implications for Council aren't great, and that was my question before floating this mayoral minute. And I think that's been answered. The financial implications aren't significant, but I think the degree of goodwill that it will generate far outweighs that slight financial implication. Is there anyone requesting any further information? A comment? Before we put that? That being the case, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. My third mayoral minute is that Councillors Certi, Walker and Drews meet with Dr Burke, Mr Tony McCurry, Mr Rod Sandell, Ms Alison Payne, Ms Alison Campbell, to formulate a submission on behalf of Council to the inquiry into rural and remote health. Further to that, the submission is to be reviewed by the Mayor and General Manager prior to being forward to the inquiry. I'm happy on moving that mayoral minute. Is someone happy to second that? Councillor Walker. We're in the throes of some significant changes in health and I think we need to be at the forefront and helping our community get the best outcomes that we possibly can. I know health is not our be-all and end-all, but it is a space we need to be in for our community, and I think it's vitally important that we make a submission to this inquiry, highlighting the infrastructure that we have here, the facilities we have here, the people we have here, but also highlighting a way forward and the things that we'd like to see occur in our community, the service provisions in the area perhaps of chemotherapy, dialysis, with trained nurses and staff in that area, a dementia unit, with upgrades to the airport, the potential for medical evacuations, etc., etc. And the way I see it, and I believe others do as well, is that Warren can become a medical hub west of Dubbo for medical services. And I think we need to make those who are running this inquiry aware of our position and aware of the capability that we do have here. Has anyone got any comments, questions on that? And I've spoken to those three councillors, so they're well in train with getting this underway. Noting, of course, that this has to be submitted by Sunday the 13th of December, which is Sunday week. Time frame is short, but a start has been made, and we're not without some expertise in that group of people, and we're not without a really pretty clear handle on where we want to go anyway. So I think it's something that can be achieved. It's just working through the process and getting it documented so that we make a decent submission. This will be Warren Council's submission, and we invite others to make submissions as well. And I think the Health Advisory Board, the Hospital Board, may well be making submission. Councillor Bruce might know more than I on that one, but the more submissions, the better. I would believe that come from our small community, but capable community. Any further comments, questions before I put that? That being the case, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. In a similar vein, further mirroring is that the Mayor, Councillor Beach, the General Manager, the Manager of Engineering Services and the Project Manager meet to formulate a submission to the pertinent options of the 49 options canvassed in the Macquarie Castlereagh Regional Water Strategy. Again, this is an important space for us to be in. It affects our town water, but it affects so many of our residents, as we've seen in this last drought period. I think we need to be at the table and at least making a submission to this inquiry. Lots of those 49 options won't apply to us, but a significant number do, and I think we need to voice our opinion in this formal process as to where we see the water issue sitting for the whole of our council area. And so we will get together as soon as we can to do that. Again, it's due on the 13th of December, but again, we'll only pick up the pertinent points. There's a lot. It is very wide-ranging. We'll have to cherry pick what's important to us as a council and promote that in the strongest possible terms. Anyone? Questions, comments on that one? I need a seconder. I am going to have a seconder. Councillor Beach, you happy to second that? Thank you. Any further comments, questions?
Is there a time frame when they collate all this and get all the feedback? And do you know if there's a timeline on
there probably is, because Councillor Walker, but I haven't looked that far in at the moment. 30, 40, 50. Right. Look, I don't have Councillor Walker. I mean, I'm sure it's there, but I have to say I'm looking at the first part of this and get that done, and then we'll look out when the outcomes are. But I mean, many of these issues have been raised over a number of years, so it's not news to anyone. It's just, in my view, trying to get politicians to act is sometimes a difficult. You know, in my view, there's some things that could have been done already, and we just need to be there again, just saying, pushing it along. Yeah, and we won't be now, obviously, on our lonesome in terms of making submission. Macquarie River Food and Fibre, the Marks Graziers, so they'll all have their issues that are pertinent to them that they'll canvass. I think there will be a whole lot shy response, but I think council needs to respond from a council viewpoint. Anything further before we put that? That being the case, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And the final one is more for information, and that is that the Manager of Engineering Services and I attended the Country Mayor's meeting on the 6th of the 11th, 20th, so September. It was many ways restricted meeting in that COVID had a significant impact on attendance numbers, but nonetheless pleased to be there. Report that Councillor Katrina Humphries from Moree stood down as Chair of the Country Mayors, and that role has been assumed by Councillor Heath from Parks as the new Chair. We heard presentations from Linda Scott from Local Government New South Wales, from Mary O'Kane, who's part of the New South Wales Independent Bushfire Inquiry, from Peter Duncan, Independent Panel for Road Classification and Review, and Mick Beach, who's the Shadow Minister for Rural Affairs and Roads, amongst other things. So that was the sum of the day. And as noted in the report regarding Levy Bank, we spoke with, on the previous day, Sam Farraway and a couple of his advisors regarding Levy Bank and funding to rehabilitate Levy Bank. And to his credit, he immediately did say that I need to talk to the Environment Minister, and took our submission straight down to him regarding the flows that had actually caused a fair bit of the damage. So we've done the preliminary work, we've left them with the written submission that the Manager of Engineering Services have put together. We will just need to, and it's in my court, keep chasing it up and see if we get some traction regarding some funding on that matter. Did I get a second to that one? No, I'll get a second to that one, sorry. Councillor Taylor. Any further questions, comments on that one? I think there'll be the opportunity to talk about the Levy Bank further on in relation specifically to country mayors. That being the case, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the reports of the committees. The first of those in the Regional Council's Chambers Sunset Committee, held Wednesday the 18th of November. Someone happy to move those minutes? Councillor Sturdy, second. Councillor Walker. Councillor Sturdy.
Just get into another section. Pretty much the recommendation that was in there was, well, I'm not with them. We went through the whole thing, sorted it all out, I believe, to the best of our ability. The recommendation is the items that are listed in there, that where the extra money's coming from. I think it's detailed, and I really think we do need to, personally, I think we really need to finish this off.
For information, councillors understanding what happened in terms of the financial implications there. What you need the Manager Financial Administration just to run through that to understand information. Yep. Thank you, Manager Financial Administration. We mind just going through the explanation there of how the funding occurred, and the second point about, well, perhaps just the completion of the building and where it will end up, etc., etc.
Yeah, very much to that, yeah. The council, or the Sunset Committee meeting in April, and put a recommendation to council to put an additional $300,000 to out of the infrastructure reserve to finish off basically the council chambers and only lock up stage for the new staff back room. Toward the end, at the end of the financial year, when the final accounts were reconciled back, because we had large liquid debtors at the end of 2019, there was no need to actually take any money from the infrastructure reserve. We actually due to the highly liquid debtors we had at the end of 19 being paid, which were basically all government grants that we've received that we had spent money on the projects but hadn't received the funding from the state government. So the infrastructure reserve wasn't actually affected by that 300,000. So that brought that up, the amount up to the 1.7 million. Since that date, we have now looking at the costings with our project manager Blake and talking to him. We believe that to finalise the whole project now, and that would include all the internal modifications that are needed, the purchase of office furniture for not just the building here, but into the staff room, into the back, which all these were not actually costed in the initial 1.7. So the initial 1.7 only really had fit out of this, as I said, and lock up stage stairs, so no plastering, no carpet, no air conditioning out the back area. They did have an amount of 50,000 for the internal fit out of the RMS area, but we've done some costings on that. The counter itself is going to cost 25 without screening, so 50 wouldn't do it anyway. And the big one that sort of got me was that the project manager's costs were never costed into that 1.7. And so I believe that to finish it off now and completely do it, 220 should do it. And again, I'm saying from the infrastructure reserve at this point in time, but I believe that at the end of the year, and again, for the losing, we have $500,000 worth of highly liquid debtors from government departments at the end of 2020 financial year, 1920 financial year. So by the end of the year, we may not even have to impact on the infrastructure reserve if things go to plan for the next 7 months, if you like. So that's a brief rundown.
I think it covers it. So the net effect is we haven't used the 300 that we had proposed. We haven't eaten into that infrastructure reserve. As the main finance administrator said, we in fact put in 261 more. So we're actually going to take back, if needs be, and only if needs be, 220 out of the infrastructure reserve to complete the building. And I think it's important that we complete the building, the whole thing, because that was the intent right at the start of the project and years ago was that we need to make two things. We need to make the council chambers area accessible to everyone, and that certainly wasn't the case upstairs. The second point is that is the front office, that is the point of contact for all of the public ratepayers, residents, with our council. The belief was right from the start we need to make that more professional than it is at present. We need to have it is the showpiece of when people come to council, they see that, hang on, these people, they are professional, they're doing a good job. It is tidy and it conveys the image that we do things properly. And I have no hesitation in concurring with the conclusion of the Sunset Committee that the recommendation should be but in a positive manner. Any further requests for information, Councillor Brewer?
What's the timeline for completion? Do we have a feel for when it will be wrapped up?
I might defer to the main finance administration for that.
Again, Mr. Mayor, the front facade out there and everything, well, hopefully they're looking at putting the back windows in, or they've mentioned today, the front. So probably 2 weeks to finish off where they are at the moment, and that was basically to get the front all finished. Scaffolding started to come down. There's still got a bit of work to do, and put the roof on top of the awning and handrail up the side. So I would envisage, not actually speaking to our project manager, I tried to catch him this morning, but he wasn't here, but probably another 2 weeks, they should have all that finished. If the resolution goes ahead with regard to the internal fit outs, that won't commence until at least February, and that's due to the project manager won't be available, and also the Service New South Wales IT people won't be on deck until about February. So, you know, I'd only be guessing, but it'll probably be another couple of months after that, so probably not until April, till it's completely finished. But as in the report, go through the stages. The first stage obviously will be is to take them all out in the records room, or the new records room, which we've got two old offices, which was the manager of health and development, and back then it was the manager of health and development secretary's office, converting that into our records room, and doing that first so we can relocate the practice area, which will allow our filing system that is currently sitting in the foyer area, if you like, in the counter area, and then do the front entrance. So if we've done them at that stage, all the other works are behind walls, if you like, so for the public's perception, it could be finished by the end of February, early March, that part of it, but the rest of the other internal work probably wouldn't be until the end of March, maybe something like that. But certainly, the first thing we would want to do is try and get the front entrance polished off, but that won't start until at least February.
Thank you. Further information required before we put that? I mean, when it's all said and done, I don't think it's a bad result, given our initial tender documents came back at very close to 3 million for the whole project. So if we can get there and not eat into any of the infrastructure reserve, I reckon my belief is that's a outstanding result. Any further information, questions before we put that? Being the case, I'll put the minutes of the Council Chambers Development Sunset Committee. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the Mannix meeting held on the 24th of November. Someone happy to move those minutes?
Move those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Seconded by Councillor Higgins. Councillor Taylor.
Just a question probably to the Manager of Engineering Services, re the highway. I understand that Uganda has the contract through Transport New South Wales now, or RMS, whatever it is, or the situation happens like this at the roundabout, that concrete that's there at the moment, it's an eyesore, probably a danger as well. Can we, as a Warranshire Council, ask permission to have that moved? You do these sort of minimal jobs without having to go down the track of going to the RMS or Transport New South Wales?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the roundabout is no longer our control. I would go back, I've already asked the responsible officer for the Uganda Shire if it can be cleaned up and moved, restructured. And he was seeking information from the Transport New South Wales. So the question's already been thrown. It is ugly, and we'd like to do something with it. Also thrown too, if you drive through the roundabout, you'll see the water leak on the northwestern corner that we're going to try and do something with as well. Again, it will affect on the effects of the roundabout. I think we just continue to pursue it, and the manager has not been at work for a number of weeks, so I don't know whether he's back at work at this point in time, but I will chase it up through him once he's back at work. And I may go through the transport rep over at Minden as well.
Councillor.
I understand that that's not under our control, but when a situation like that happens, surely under an emergency situation, we would have the ability to go and tidy something like that up. So,
Mr. Mayor, through you again, I've stressed with them it could be a far bigger issue because we council are planning a stage 2 Dubbo Street upgrade, which greatly affects the roundabout, and the roundabout works in there. We have to start working with RMS for that roundabout because technically it's theirs, and that we want them to contribute the money for it. And I've stressed those things with them. I think, as you'll see later in the meeting, that the acting general manager and I are going to see the RMS, and I think it's probably appropriate that we bring some of these issues up at that meeting.
Just for your information, Councillor Taylor, Manager of Engineering Services, on my way into town this morning, there is Gilgandra vehicles at the truck stop opposite UMR Waste Depot tidying that area up. So I don't believe it's beyond capabilities of those people to come a fraction further and just tidy this up. They had a bobcat there, and yeah. So I think it's something that should be pursued at with some sort of degree of intensity to get some action, because it isn't acceptable that the amount of time that concrete's been sitting there. It's just, in my view, not acceptable. Any other further questions? Yes, Councillor Walker from the Manners.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask the Managing Engineering Services. I read that you're in negotiation with the union over working with weekends and flexi days. Is there an update on that situation?
Going through you, Mr. Mayor, we are negotiating with the USU in regard to the recreation of the workplace agreement, as it was a 50-hour agreement in the past, right, and related only to the grader operators. We have a far greater number of staff, road staff, working on the roads other than the grader operators and the grader teams, even working together the haulage teams. And we've also got roadside maintenance teams, just guide past all of those things, and the efficiency of work. They just changed the draft agreement to include those staff in it. In the past, council has had to accept that agreement with no consent from the USU, because the USU would not have any bar of it. There's been a bit of a change of feeling, and at the latest meeting, which was about 3 weeks ago, with the USU, they've agreed to become part of that agreement, which very much strengthens it from my point, or from the council's point of view as well. With that agreement, I think it's far better, and that's what's negotiating at the moment. The General Manager will be involved in the decision, or will give the authorisation on the final decision when it's negotiated.
So I suppose that will help, given the more hours spent doing the roads and
Going through, Mr. Mayor, but when the staff are working in the northern reaches, and there's a fair bit of work to be done, at the moment it's 150 to 220 kilometres up, and we do have a camping agreement. I think it's unreasonable to think that they work, when they're camping, work 8 hours a day, and we've got about almost 8 hours of daylight outside that, but we should be entitled to work a couple of more hours, and they work with us. They only part of the agreement is time and a half. They do work flexis, at their lib, which there's no weekend works, or there's no any of the agreement or the allowances outside the inside the award are paid as per the award, no negotiation on the agreement.
Thank you. Very good. That satisfies you, Councillor Walker. I just one question regarding information. Foodies Night, request for food market, just some information on that. I don't know what that actually pertains to. I might defer that to
Yes.
Services.
Yes. So it is an organisation that arranges a food market, essentially. So you have all different markets there that are selling food.
Are they locals or other?
No, they're from away. They are from away.
Was that an issue for Mannix?
It was COVID, because of COVID. So it was similar to the previous request for a pop-up show. And at that stage, we decided it was in the community's best interest not to approve that event to be held. Since COVID, restrictions have lifted, and the risk is probably lesser than what it has been previously, that we reconsidered Foodie's application.
Thank you. Any further questions, information sought on the next meetings? Councillor Walker.
I'm just wondering also, I don't know who to ask, it's about having a phone service for after hours, and there's a bit of a chat about a couple of companies that have been, there was various between Glen and various other councils to get a name of a few companies. Has that got any progress in
Companies.
So
this is
phone,
hours.
after hours, yeah. So, Southern Phone was one, and Midwest, and Well Done International. There were letters, Glenn put it out there to ask about what other councils did for this situation, and they came up with a few names. So I'm just wondering if anything had been pursued.
Not mine.
I'll take it. No, I'll do the interim general manager will, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Walker, it's my understanding that there was information to be sought to cover our after-hours emergency call-outs, whereby companies are the initial contact, and that information is then passed on to the relevant officer at that particular time, as opposed to a mobile telephone being passed around council staff on a roster system. Sometimes, or most times, council staff are able to answer. Sometimes they're unable for various reasons. And I know it's been my experience that you pay a company, they organise their own staff to take the call, and then it comes back. Now, as a result of the previous general manager's inquiries, I haven't seen any detail on that as yet. We have talked about that this week at the senior team because there was a situation on the weekend where a phone call was made and contact could not be connected or made. So we're certainly continuing to look at that to ensure that we can provide the best service that we can.
I think, Councillor Walker, to your question, I think it's particularly important that we have that after-hours service, particularly with the possibility, well, not possibly, the fact that bushfires are happening. Council can provide a valuable service with their graders in terms of grading the break pretty quickly and minimising damage. And the Management Engineering Services is acutely aware every weekend of where the graders are. So we just need to, I think there's a heightened sense in this summer that we need to be acutely aware of where our graders are, what we can do to help in the event of a bushfire. Graders are invaluable.
Well, I hope to come up with some sort of.
Yep, absolutely. Make sure people are contactable.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, through you, unofficially, my phone never leaves my side, my pocket, when I'm mowing the lawn, whatever I do, and I have received a call out for the last 2 bushfires, right, which I don't know whether it went through the on-call system or not, or whether the people at the fire centre just were aware of my number, because I do have close liaison with them. But I don't think there's a problem there. I'm available for a call if nobody's available on call, because it can be. So we have 4 staff that rotate around on the on call. They did work out pretty well together. First thing Monday morning, the phones are changed over so that they get the on-call number out of ours. Again, there are always time for, you don't hear the phone.
My belief in the engineering services should be that we know where there is a grader operator close to whatever graders are around at the moment. You say that.
Again, yesterday's fire out on the Undermark Road, right? It wasn't our shot. We didn't have a grader operator. There was a grader in the yard. We didn't have an operator for it, but the overseer quickly found one, and the grader was put on the road. I mean, that's the response. I think if we can get the contact to the right people, we can usually score a result, no matter whether there's some of the operators available.
I think that as long as it's in hand and we can act really quickly, yes, that's the result we're after. Any further questions, comments, information sought on the minutes of the Mannix meeting? That being the case, we'll put those. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the meeting of the Roads Committee held on Monday afternoon. The minutes, the hard copy is there for you. Is someone happy to move those minutes? Councillor Brewer, I saw on my left there, and Councillor Bruce. Councillor Brewer.
I think possibly the most important part of the meeting that we had was a really good meeting, and thank you everyone for attending. And the Manager of Engineering Services was very helpful with some information, and I think that we'll remember the contract that we didn't sign with Transport for New South Wales, and that there was we sent a letter to Transport for New South Wales saying that we were uncomfortable with with the signing of the agreement, because it looked like we were saddling up to a whole bunch of risk and potential for litigation from damage and accidents and things like that. We've had a rethink about the position that council has with that contract, and there's a number of factors that go into it, but just the Mayor's mention of the Gilgandra Shire in our Shire with picks and shovels annoys me a little bit. And some of the work that was recently done outside on the highway outside the waste depot was probably had to be redone. It probably wasn't up to scratch, and it was in our Shire, so that's a little bit rough as well. So the intent of that part of this meeting was to allow the Manager for Engineering Services and the Interim General Manager to approach the state government to ask about rescinding that motion, basically, that says, just to work out whether we can reverse our decision and what are the implications for that. So the question was asked at the meeting whether we will actually be able to do that or not if we were to go down that path. And this meeting was not about actually making the decision to reverse it. It was to investigate the implications of whether, first of all, we could, and if we could, what would that look like and how long would it take, because Gilgandra Shire may well be in a long-term contract with the Transport for New South Wales, so we don't know. But I personally think that we made an error in judgment on that one. We were led by the previous General Manager, and he made a compelling case for it. He did at the time mention that the Gilgandra Shire Council had essentially signed it and handed it back and just got on with it type of thing. And I might refer to the Interim General Manager for the details, basically, but to explain to us some of the, maybe some of the risk that we had perceived with that contract may not be what we thought. And secondly, is there's been a subsequent letter in response to our letter saying that we didn't want to do that, and that was only really, that was a September letter, so well after the fact that came in. So, and in that letter, it kind of talks about it'd be a business as usual sort of situation. But as the Mayor quite accurately pointed out, the contract is one thing and letters are completely other. So we still have to allay some of our fears in that, and we want the contract to be a little bit clearer and a little bit more, I guess, plain speak for us about that risk. How's that?
I'll defer to the General Manager for a quick comment. Keeping in mind, Councillor Brewer, your comment there that we're seeking information, I think we'll be in a better position when the General Manager and the Manager and Engineering Services have had a discussion, then we can really...
Yeah, we're not rescinding anything right now, we're just allowing them to have a conversation to see what would happen.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Brewer's description is pretty good. All it was a report to Council by the committee to kick a process off. The first thing we have to do is talk to Transport for New South Wales to determine whether there is any opportunity for Council to take on the work within the Shire on the State Road network. Now, if that answer is no, we'll have to consider a different plan if in fact Council chooses to head down that path. If they say yes, well then it's a matter of coming back to you in various reports. I understand where you've been, and for good reason. You have chosen a particular path, and you know that's great. You've made a decision, and based on information. So now it's up to staff to get information across to you if we feel that perhaps we might head down a different direction, and that will be an understanding of the contractual arrangements. Also, the issues of undertaking work generally. The liability issue of roadworks with RMS, I think are limited. Certainly, if there's malice or somebody goes out there to purposely do a bad job, well, that's a different story. But we are guided by RMS with their specifications for design. We're guided by the RMS with specifications for material, the way that the work has to be undertaken, touch points on when that we have to test for either compaction or concrete strength, whatever. All that is prescribed by the RMS. Now, providing we have competent staff undertaking the work, and you do have that, and we satisfy those requirements, the job proceeds well. And again, it's been my experience as an engineer that RMS work provides an alternative to the normal work that council staff undertake. Generally are bigger jobs, and also cover our costs to some extent. Sorry, they definitely cover the cost, but there is a little bit of surplus that we're able to utilise in other projects as well. So, in discussions with the Director of Engineering, Executive Manager of Engineering Services, we felt that it was a good idea to bring it to the committee as a floater, and that with the imprimatur of the council today, that we move further down that path and come back to you with further reports.
Thank you. As we were all aware, the stumbling block was that if you were the principal contractor, the liability ended with you, and that was our stumbling block. We are not precluded from actually doing subcontract work for Gilgandra Council, and I think that's something we perhaps should be canvassing with Transport for New South Wales. But nonetheless, let's wait and see what the discussion brings, and we can make an informed decision then. Yeah.
Other than that, we had some really interesting information on the road counters in that meeting. One of the recommendations was that we get further detail on that and compare those data to the years of road information, just to see, I guess, whether the amount of traffic is greater and the type of traffic and those sorts of things are greater on the roads, but that'll come back to us next time. So it was actually a pretty good meeting, and that, I think that's pretty much it.
To the exchange of roads.
Oh, the swapping of
Reclassification.
yes. Yeah. We discussed at length the inland flat route, and I think we're all very much aware of the traffic that's been on those roads, Tottenham Road and those others, through that inland flat route. So we're recommending that those roads are changed from, let me get this right,
From local roads to
regional roads. And so then the responsibility lies then with the state for the maintenance of those roads. And some of those roads take an enormous amount of traffic in recent times, a huge amount of trucks. And I personally travel those roads a fair bit, and they're certainly a very important freight route for heavy machine road trains. So it takes a bit of flogging, and it's in parts of it are in pretty bad repair. And you only have to go down to Tottenham and have a look at that intersection on the Tottenham Nevertire Road, I think it is, and that then the Bogan Road. That intersection was incredibly torn up, and would have taken a significant amount of expense to get that in the state it's in down there. But the trucks are pretty hard on those roads. So yeah, a request for the reclassification was discussed as well.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer. Councillor Bruce.
Yeah, just also too, when we were discussing Bonbobby Bridge, I just commended the Manager of Engineering on his communication to all the landholders out there and to the councillors, kept them in the loop and updated the whole time on where we were at with all that, and I want to publicly commend him again, because we've talked a lot about communication issues, and I think that it was really good, so well done.
Councillor Bruce makes a very valid point there. The communication, the killer issues, there were the what ifs and what might happen if, and I would have to say that those concerns were dealt with in a very professional and a professional manner, and the outcomes to those concerns were achieved in a very professional way. Sidetrack is exemplary and unfortunately has to be dismantled. And then the road, the grading of the Wombobby Road back to the Warren Road, gave alternatives to those people. I would hope that they're extremely satisfied with the bridge that is now open. It looks fantastic. I haven't seen it yet, but it is that on-site meetings that occurred at least once with Councillor Williamson and I. There was a degree of antagonism there. Over time, that was overcome, and some good communication. This is where we're up to. This is where we're going. Timelines were kept to, and I endorse entirely Councillor Bruce's comments and the whole road committee's comments on that one. That it was a project well done, well executed, and look, unfortunate accident there, but you know, nonetheless, everything fell into place. Even when inquiries were made of council as per your procedures and policies there, and so that is a big tick from my point of view, and I think from other council's point of view in terms of the way things have been done. And so yeah, very positive to see that happen. And just sorry, the other point I'll make about the roads committee is that we have received, and it's only been confirmed by email, but Darren, are we at liberty to say that yet or not? Yeah, we are, aren't we? Yeah, we received 508. Yeah, we've received notification of $508,000, which can be spent on local roads and community infrastructure. The view is that roads have already taken, have it in their mind, but going forward with road planning, it may well be that 500,000 can then be our 25% of a total project of $2 million in terms of local roads. So potentially continuing with the Ellengerard Road to get that tied up a bit further, the Old Warren Road a bit further, and Never Tire Bogan Road a bit further as well. So we're in the process of seeking grant funding. So we would need 25%. We'd be seeking grant funding of 1.5, rough numbers. 1.2, that already means 2 million. 2 million, 2 million total. Total, yes. But that's where discussion was on roads, etc., on going forward. So yeah, I think it's just so you know where we're potentially headed.
Mr. Mayor, just the next roads committee meeting is registered down as the 8th of February. It may come forward because of that issue that you just discussed. So it can go to the 28th of January council meeting for confirmations.
Yeah. Very good. So good. I'm happy to do that.
Just suggesting, sorry, through the mayor, Councillor Brewer and Councillor Druce is the seconder. Councillor Druce, you were acknowledging the work undertaken by the Executive Manager and your new services. I just asked the Mayor whether you might like to add a part 2, because the first part is that the minutes be noted. For words to that effect, you might want to put a part 2 acknowledging the work undertaken, and obviously with the concurrence of the mover. Acknowledge the work undertaken by the Executive Manager Engineering Service in communicating with the locals, in providing project information throughout the project, something like that.
Councillor Brewer, happy? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Councillor Druce, thank you for that. Is there any further discussion, information sought before we move those minutes? Happy by reply? No. Any further before we put the minutes of the Roads Committee meeting held last Monday afternoon? Being no further discussion, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the reports of the delegates, being one of those regarding the North West Library Cooperative Annual General Meeting. Councillor Sergi, you're happy to move that. Second. Councillor Bruce was just in front of Councillor Walker. Councillor Sergi.
Yeah, it's pretty much all there. It was a good meeting attended by most of the, all the library people were there. We're missing a few councillors. As I said, I've been re-elected as chair for the coming year, and Councillor Irving has been re-elected to the Executive Management Committee for the coming year. Very honest position, that one. I haven't met many of years. But you gotta have it. So, yeah, apart from that, no, everything is in there. It's, the whole of the 4 shires libraries have done everything that they possibly can to make sure that COVID didn't have an adverse effect on the communities that we serve. And we've had really good feedback from a lot of people, the fact that we've been out and about in various communities. So, yeah.
Good. And
Good questions.
we'll note that further along, there's a, regarding the 2%, was it IPART increase in our contribution, or everyone's contribution, but our contribution. Thank you, Councillor Surgeon. Any comments, further questions, discussion, information required? Before we put that being the case, we'll put the item 1 of the reports of the delegates, the North West Library Cooperative AGM report. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to policy items, and the first of those being and the other one of those being in relation to vacation care policies, and particularly in relation to the audit review that was conducted regarding vacation care. Someone happy to move that item and the recommendations in that item? Councillor, sorry, I wasn't watching. Councillor Walker, you were first. Councillor Sergi, seconded. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, look, I do read it. I just think it's good that it's lapsed and they've had an update and they've put in a lot of procedures that need to be put in, and it's a great service. It's obviously families and children.
So what we have to do, so what we have to do on this recommendation is put it out for public comment for 28 days. And Councillor Walker, you had more information?
Can I ask a question? I'm just wondering, is there some down the track, obviously they turn people, children away in families. Is there any plan of maybe making this, having more employees to accommodate the numbers of children? Seems to be increasing.
That Councillor Walker, but refer to the manager of development for
It's a very vital service.
Thank you. Through you, Sam, I have discussed that with the staff, and it is definitely an option to increase that service. They did express a concern that it does become too much. If you get more than 30 children, it can become a bit daunting within an area. It's definitely something worth considering.
Thank you. Any further information? Questions before?
Last question. So, council is seen as the employer of the vacation care staff. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct.
So, are there any employers casuals?
Yes.
There have been times when we haven't been able to run vacation care because you haven't had suitably qualified people to run it. We do receive a slight subsidy from the National Administration for vacation care. It's not significant though, as I recall.
Free it's been made, we just do that to reduce our hours if you like, and sometimes we spend about $6,000 subsidy, and we probably spend in the order of 12 per day, and the user charges is becoming around about $6,000. That's for subsidised for about $6,000.
So there is a financial implication there for employing more staff, and which we don't think is there. It's not there, but exactly. So, Councillor Walker, we happen to move that recommendation, seconded by Councillor Sergi. Is there any further information or comments before we put that? In case all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the reports to council, the first of those being reports of the general manager. The first of those being the outstanding reports checklist. Someone happy to move those? Sorry, what I'm not paying attention as well as I might. Is someone happy to move those? Yes, standing project with Councillor Taylor, second Councillor Walker, Councillor Taylor.
Recommendation, please.
Questions regarding item 1 of the report of the General Manager? That being the case, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now, I'm not going to forget this week, this month, in recognition of Warren being a healthy town and to keep awareness of a healthy lifestyle, Council will be standing while revealing the defining item of the business paper, that being item 2 of the report of the General Manager, committee and delegate meetings. Someone happy to move that? That being the recommendation you received noted. Thank Councillor Surdy, Councillor Bruce, Councillor Surdy.
We are happy to move the recommendation. Can I just make a request in light of the fact that it's such a short report, can we include the next one in the stand-up as well?
That's controversial, Councillor Surdy.
I can't read.
Pay attention.
I was expecting the ode or.
Just give me 1 minute because you can see there. No, that's all. That's what you do. Get them up to me. So sorry, I've lost it. Councillor Surdy.
Just remain stand-up for the next one as well.
You are right, standing for the next one. Sorry. Any further comments, information sought regarding item 2 of the General Manager's report, now that he's clear about what we're doing? There being nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 3 of the report of the General Manager. And that relates to Christmas closure. Is someone happy to move that recommendation? Or Councillor Surdy is happy? But you do want to sit down, Councillor Surdy.
No, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Councillor Walker or Councillor Higgins seconding that. Councillor Surdy.
Yes.
I'd like to speak to that.
Very happy to move the recommendation. It's definitely a good recommendation. Acknowledgement of the has happened with the council, so I think, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, the staff.
Yeah, you're happy. The recommendation as it stands, yes. Excuse me.
Yes, thank you.
Close the business on Wednesday the 23rd. The council will close and that staff will have a paid day on Thursday the 24th of December this month. Any information sought, questions, discussions before we put that in? Councillor Walker, now, I'm going to hold you, hold. It's like an exercise program, hold. Any further questions, discussion? No, thank you for being the case. We put that. All those in favour, against, carried. Councillor Walker, you may now be seated.
Thank you.
Moving on to the reports now of the Division of Annual Finance Administration. First of those being reconciliation certificate for October. Someone happy to move that? Someone happy to move the reconciliation certificate for October, item 1 of the Division Manager of Finance Administration's report. Councillor Surdy is moving that. Second, Councillor Bruce, you're seconding. Councillor Surdy. Thank you. Any further questions, information sought before we put that?
Just right.
Let us know. Yeah, don't keep it to yourself.
Next one's not going to look that good.
Okay, sorry, any further comments, questions regarding item 1 of the Manager of Finance Administration's report? Being the case, put that. All those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to item 2 of the Division Manager of Finance Administration's report, that's being the statement of rates and charges. Is someone happy to move that? Councillor Surdy. Second, Councillor Drews. Councillor Certainty.
Yeah, actually, it's surprising to see that for the period in question, the actual percentage of rates paid is gone slightly up, which is really good.
Yep, it's holding up. And Manfine administration would have had a bit of an influx since that time with rates being due a couple of days ago. So look,
I agree, there's certainly more people coming.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it is pleasing to see that, it's up around, the average level from the last, over the last 4 or 5 years.
yeah. No, very good. Any further comments, questions before we put item 2? Being the case, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 3, regarding the special dementia unit, and the representative from the Warren Shire Council to join that committee. Someone happy, Councillor Beach is happy to make a nomination there. Councillor Bruce. Councillor Bruce, are you happy to accept that nomination?
Very happy to accept it.
Probably in order. I need a seconder for the motion as well. Councillor Taylor. Everyone's very keen to see Councillor Bruce be part of that organisation. Thank you, Councillor Bruce, for accepting that position. Is there any further comment, question on that matter? Being the case, to put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 4, the review of Council's 2019-2020 operation. This is to do with the information regarding the Council's audited financial statements, concluding at the 30th of June of this year. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Certainty. Seconded. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Certainty.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation, and if manager of finance would like to just give a bit more of an update. We much appreciate it. Thank you.
Main Finance Administration, do you have some comments there, or is there anything that you feel that Council needs to be aware of in terms of those audited financial statements?
Not really. We've seen an unqualified audit report. When looking at the audit report, we've achieved but one benchmark, which is the benchmark that Warren Shire Council will never meet, and that is the own source revenue after deducting grants. And I don't believe that any rural council, and especially Western rural councils, will ever meet the 60%. And we did approach, when the future stuff was coming around, that we believe that we should be allowed to leave our FAGS grant in there, because it is a recurrent income, if you like, from the federal government passed with the states, which, if anything, it's only going to hopefully get better for the rural and western councils. That would put us over the 60%, but other than that, the year is, we've done fairly well, and achieved all the benchmarks that the fit for the future is looking for. Which is, I think when we put restrictions and things up in previous meetings back in August and things like that, but I mean, there's a copy of the financial reports are on the website. I've got a copy there if anyone really wants to look through them. I can send you a PDF copy so you can take them home with whatever. But yeah, no, it did take. I mean, we were audited back in about the 21st or 22nd of August, but it was done via external from remote because of COVID, obviously. And yeah, it just took a long time for them to sign off, basically. And that was due to them having all those other councils doing it. So that is why the Office of Local Government extended all reporting timeframes by a month to take into account the COVID situation. And from problems with, having to find information, scan it, email it, then looking at it, they come back to you with questions. So, it was frustrating.
Yes.
I mean, I was thinking, well, end of August, beauty, all done, let's figure out something else, but dragged through until basically October with questions here and there by the time they got onto ours. So it was frustrating.
Nonetheless, to receive an unqualified audit report is an excellent result, and I'd like to publicly thank the Manager of Finance and Administration for all his work and his team behind him for getting that up underway in difficult circumstances in terms of the to and froing, but a great result, and I think we've come a long way since the days of when we were battling to retain our independence as a council in the days of Fit for the Future. There's only that one benchmark that the Manager of Finance Administration had alluded to that we were never going to achieve, and now we're achieving all those benchmarks. I think that's a credit to the organisation, it provides the perception and the reality that we're actually a stable council and that we are financially stable and that we have a way forward. And I think that's just desperately important in these times when other councils, much bigger councils than us, as in the Armadales, the Central Coast, are floundering. That we need to really keep a tight handle on where things are and where our money's going and our budgets, and the fact that our finance administration area is strong, and I'm just so proud of that and pleased with that, and it gives us, then it takes away a lot of heat off us having to try and find money for various things. I mean, we're always going to try and find money, but we're sensible, and we're not in a position where we're under a lot of pressure, and that's full credit to Darren and his team. Any further comments, questions before we put that item 4 of the Vision Manager of Finance Administration? That being the case, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 4 regarding the North West Library Cooperative contribution. Someone happy to move that? Again, I think Councillor Certainty, thank you. Second, Councillor Walker. Councillor Certainty.
Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendation. The increase that we've asked for is just 2%, which equates to not even $2,000 for the work that the libraries do. I think it's an excellent spend.
Thank you, Councillor Certainty. Any further information, comments, questions before we put that? Again, being the case, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the final item, we go from the Manager of Finance Administration. Sorry, okay, the agreement as opposed to the, jumped ahead, reading them both. Sorry, item 6, the North West Library Cooperative Agreement. Councillor Certainty, thank you, I'm glad you're here. So the second, Councillor Walker, I'm glad you're here. Councillor Certainty.
The actual amendment to the agreement as stated in the system is basically just a change of the dates for the next 4-year period from 1st of July 2021. So the rest of it is pretty much the same, just a couple of little typos which we fix out. Apart from that, all good, so I'd like to move the recommendations as stands.
Thank you. Any further information prior to we put item 6? Being the case, put item 6, the North West Library Cooperative Agreement. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now moving on to item 7, the Council Bank account signatories. Again, this is something we just need to work through, but there's no great drama. Councillor Druce is happy to move that. Second, Councillor Walker. Councillor Druce.
Yes, no. Happy to move
Yes, no.
the line up there, so yep.
Councillor Druce, I think I've, in my time on council, been asked to sign a cheque once. So I don't think it's something that's very, there's always the appropriate staff people here to do that. So yeah, I think it's yes, something that's required but not very rarely used. That being the case, so I like bringing the pictures. On the camera period. That being the case, put item 7. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the reports of the Division Manager Engineering Services, and the first of those being item 1 relating to the Warren Showground and the renewal of the Ron McCalman Pavilion. Let's just get what's recommendation. Someone happy to read the recommendation there? Councillor Beach, and second, Councillor Drews. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you remember from the October meeting, we put made some recommendations for the show committee to meet to proceed with the replacement of the McCalman Pavilion. The delegates met with council management, and as a result of that meeting, we're happy for them to proceed with the modernisation of the McCalman Pavilion. Basically, Mr. Mayor, it comes down to the show committee being the show PA Society, yeah, being financially strong enough to absorb any overruns. So we're happy for them to proceed with that. Probably the only thing that probably needs a quick explanation is the DA. I might refer that to Mr. Mayor to the manager of mental health.
Thank you, Councillor Beach. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4 of my report is in relation to the development application for the pavilion. It's actually exempt or permitted without approval. Sorry. Under the infrastructure set. However, because it is on bushfire prone land and flood prone land, the applicant does need to consult with council for those matters to ensure that they're adequately addressed.
Thank you. You have something right there now.
I was just going, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor said the only thing to add, the difference between the infrastructure set and the DA process is quite marginal. The set relates to items that we own, where the council owns, and providing there are no difficult circumstances where you might require an EIS or something like that, the infrastructure set can apply, and generally provides a pathway that is less onerous than a DA. So we've reviewed that, and that's certainly, as the manager has indicated, the path that we're heading down, and the subject of a report later on in the business paper. So it's, it's a good way of doing it. It was quick.
So, Councillor Brewer.
For Councillor Beach, I thought we asked for a budget in that letter. We asked for several things in the letter. We said, basically, tell us what you would want to do, rather than it had refurb, rebuild, and whatever the other option was. I'm sure we asked them for a budget.
I guess we asked them for a whole lot of stuff because we were concerned with their financial viability, and after looking at their position, they're certainly strong enough to be able to handle overruns as we saw it. So we were confident for them to move ahead.
Can I just add, Mr. Mayor? That's right. Was that the October, or might have been the one before, or something like that? They have provided the information. It was the quotes that they've received, the minutes of their subcommittee heading down that particular option of a renewal rather than refurbishment. The quotes included a cost to renew, and just in very broad figures, it was around 140 grand as opposed to a total renewal cost of around 170. And that's why the committee took the view to replace. It's putting a concrete floor on top of the existing floor, so that I haven't been out there. Well, I've been out there, but I haven't been inside the building, so I understand the floor's a little bit up and down, so that'll sort that out. And it'll be a brand new building with doors in the correct place and a little bit of an office and some bench space that was requested by the subcommittee. So that information has been provided. I'll have to go back, Councillor Brewer, and just check what the resolution was, because if that information has been requested to go out to the council laws, I haven't sent that out, and I apologise if that's the situation, but I'll check that out and get it out.
I guess the move that I felt from the last meeting was that if that was the only issue that to stop it going ahead is they weren't financial enough. And also we met with the Showground subcommittee and ran it past them, and they were happy to proceed under those circumstances. So, but yeah, I hear what you're saying, that if that was required, we should follow it.
The other thing that springs to mind, Councillor Beach, was I think we did ask for some minutes of a meeting of the P&A Society that actually indicated that the whole P&A Society. We got that? We've got that. Thank you. Okay, good. Just ticking off those things that Councillor Brewer has said. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Councillor Drew.
And just part of that recommendation too is even though it'll be a new building, that the Ron McCalman name had to stay there for historical purposes. That was very important.
Yeah, Councillor Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just you're saying they've got a grant of how much?
They got a grant through.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, no.
They received a grant of 160,000 from the federal grant.
Yeah.
Also, they had 40,000 left over from that state fund.
So we're up to the two. So the
yeah.
20 is going to be provided by the P&A Society. There's no geotech study. Is that included in their budget?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I've liaised with the committee about geotech, and depending on today's decision, geotech will be.
But is that a cost in their budget that they're covering? Like, it is.
It is covered in the.
And I mean, it's a shed. Would there be an issue with asbestos removal and all that sort of thing?
Going through you, Mr Mayor, that they're more than happy to meet the cost of the geotech information. They've got the money in the bank or in their reserve, what let's call it, to be able to satisfy that. You know, what we need to do the geotech, we need to know the class of the building, the floor, and all the rest of the stuff which will come from the health and building manager, so that the geotechnical company knows exactly what the outside parameters or constraints for that building floor analysis are. Because the quote from WRL did stipulate the holding capacity required, which we've got to satisfy.
Just to answer Councillor Walker.
No, not really, because I'm also going to follow on and ask, because of the issue that's been happening with houses and you say it's a flood-prone area. Is there any consideration that something unforeseen might occur in that area? That, you know, it's a concrete slab again, water lying around, is that an issue that might be of a concern in this building?
That's the first one, to manage engineering service, then Councillor Beach to respond if there's something else.
The geotechnical analysis will provide us considerations of those points and take everything into consideration. So we will know the parameters required for that building in the flood-prone circumstances to avoid any ground movement, or provide for the ground movements and the water movement beneath that building. And I'm quite confident that the geotech will help us out to resolve. So that, I mean, you are making comparisons to the houses, right? Up on in whatever that is, Gunnerborough Estate. I mean, and we're more than aware of that, and I think the geotechnical company will give us a bit of a direction for what should be done as well. I think groundwater control is a big part of that element, and that the geotech we may have, or the P&A may have to supply some additional funds to control those. They are aware of that, and they've been told that they've got the money in the bank.
Sorry, Councillor Walker, just more questions?
I might be banging on about this, but I'm just concerned that if there is an overspend, is it going to be covered by the PA, or is it going to end up being you have to take money from somewhere else?
General Manager will take.
That's a council.
He's dealt with it, yes.
I've been through the file, the various files. I've also seen the last 3 months' bank statements. They have more than enough money to carry out the work. Any overruns at the meeting that Councillor Beach referred to, the senior staff. I said, what happens if you're $10,000 or $15,000 over? They said, we will fund that. So they have a total budget of around 220. So that includes the money from, I think it was federal money, wasn't it? State money, was it? Plus a little bit out of the showground money, 37,000.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, this showground money is state money. This was a federal funding for showgrounds, sorry. Yes,
yeah, so there's significant monies there. They've got a contingency factor. They've covered electrical, plumbing, I was convinced that they had sufficient funds there, and happy to hear that they could cover overruns, and the information I saw certainly supports their comment. Because, sorry, Mr Mayor, just to continue, we made it clear on a number of occasions in that meeting that council will not be providing any funding for the project.
So Councillor Beach has
just to Councillor Walker, I'm all very mindful of what you said, because I think that was a real concern about us when we were involved with them, that they couldn't meet all these requirements, because and that's why we pursued the idea of leaving the existing shed and modifying it, which we were very strong. But I guess the news at our last council meeting was that if the money's there and they can financially show that they can support any overruns, that we would support it. And I guess that's why we've gone from favouring it, not knocking it down, to supporting their wish, I guess.
Councillor Beach, can I suggest that we add a point 4 to the 5 to the recommendation in terms of timing, that we don't need is a problem with timing running into the show that it's not ready. I don't know what the Showground Racecourse Development Committee have said in terms of that, but we just need to be mindful. Start a project, we need to have it finished by Warren Show, well and truly a month before. Yeah. So it's relatively tight enough.
Christmas.
Yeah, and the unforeseens that we all now know about, the unforeseens and everything. I think we just need to somehow frame that in the recommendation to council.
Mr Mayor, I've spoken with them about that, and would they have it ready for the show? The WRL, which is a big contender in that work, has got a January free period, right, of which they're happy, depending on today's decision, right, to commit themselves to, or WRL commit themselves to the P&A project.
I think we just need a 5 to say that the P&A Society undertake to have the new pavilion in place for the 2021 Warren Show. That's good. And then it's in their ball court to make sure that the project runs efficiently and on time.
Can I just ask one question about the finances? Are we comfortable that the state government, that we can overcome? In fact, the state government money was for refurbishment and the federal government money was for renewal. So both those loans, if they become audited, are we okay with that? We can deal with that? Or the application of both those loans were for different purposes?
They're both grants.
Yes, they are, but one was granted for a refurbishment specifically, the other one was for a renewal specifically, and they're being combined to do exactly.
No. The 37 was for. Yep.
Okay.
That's in the 400 would be more than that. Yep.
Okay, so there's no problem.
No. So with the indulgence of the mover and the seconder, can we add a point 5 that along the lines that the P&A Society undertake to have the project completed 2 weeks prior to the Warren Show?
See it happening.
2020, 2021.
2021, thank you. Exactly, Councillor Brewer, yes.
We're nearly there.
Okay. Thank you, Jody.
They're very quick.
Is there any further discussion, questions regarding item 1 of the Division Manager of Engineering Services report regarding the Ron McCalman Pavilion? No, that being the case, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 2 of the Division Manager Engineering Services report, that being the Warren Levy Bank rehabilitation. Someone happy to move that?
With recommendations.
With recommendation, Councillor Taylor, thank you. Second. Councillor Drews. Councillor Taylor.
Well, it's all up to grants now, I guess. We know what we're up against. Still think it's a project of significant priority, given that the dam can fill at any time, which we've known in years gone by. And so I think we need to be hammering on this to get the funding for it.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you.
And there's a dental surgery on top of it.
Yeah. Look, Councillor Taylor, I undertake to do that with Sam Faraway MLC, and yeah, yes, we'll make contact again and see where we're going. And, I don't think there's any doubt as to the importance that we saw it as being to, and the significant risks that's posed by the levy not being in as good conditions as could be. Councillor Walker.
Now, I'm just wondering, is it worth thinking of, as there was a fund for all of this, down the track of putting away for a something as a levy bank, which is a very important part of the community?
I'll defer to the Manager of Finance Administration. We have an undertaking to do levy maintenance every year, do we not? And is there funding aside for that? I believe there is, but I'll defer to you on that one.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Knowing that there was issues arising, I actually restricted all the unspent portion of the levy at the end of last financial year, and we have in there at the moment 45,000 in restricted funds, internally restricted funds at the moment. So we put, I think it's around about $50,000 a year in maintenance. This year it was 51,000. So, and last year it was 50. So what I'd done, anything that wasn't expended, I don't usually do that for maintenance items. Maintenance items, if you don't spend it in the year, then they go into consolidated revenue. But knowing the issues with the levy and the need that we would probably need to try and find some money, I did put that in last year, transfer to the restricted funds, which I reported to the August meeting. And again, just to try and help alleviate trying to find funds out of the budget, of the operational budget for this year, which we didn't budget for any major works for it. Yes, I did put it away for the levy. I was on the horizon. I did some fairly major expenditure.
Councillor Sergi.
Just one thing I've noticed, typo on line 3, seeking financial assistance. The assistance is in twice. Just one of them needs to pop out. Item 3, we just read after stated that. Seeking financial assistance, so the first assistance is.
Yeah, assistance. The first one. Yeah. Thank you. Any further comments, information sought regarding item 2 of the Division Manager Engineering's report on the levy bank rehabilitation? That being the case, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Third item of the Division Manager Engineering Services report relating to the tender for the supply of passenger truck and earth moving tyres. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Drews. Seconded. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Drews.
Yeah, just move that recommendation, please.
Aren't you excited by tyres? That's right. Councillor Sergi, absolutely.
I'm just a wee bit confused. confused, I just needed somebody to clarify. If you go to the table near the end, the coloured table.
Yeah.
You've got, there's two companies in there, one called Tire Max and the other one's called Walker's Tires. But they're both Walker's Tire Centre, they're both at Narromine. Prices are different. What's the, I'm
have
confused.
I have no idea, but I wonder if the Division of Engineering Services might be able to update us, but it may, I don't know. I don't know whether to, I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, this contract is set up from Newcastle on regional procurement. So we don't have a lot of input into that. They go out and seek all the tenders, which is far easier for us and far easier for council. We just use the end result, but to accept that because it's been a tender, council must resolve.
I mean, I'm just curious as to, you know, they're both the same company and yet the prices are different. And I thought, oh, okay. This is something that we're not sort of, they haven't highlighted in there. So.
We are none the wiser, Councillor Sergi, but
It's all right, I could be a fool on me own. I won't be a fool on me own.
matters, yeah, well,
Thank you.
one of them scored the highest number of points there, so yeah,
Yes.
I don't.
So, well, can I just ask one more question? When you're doing and looking at getting tires, you go from the best one down, depending on who has the tires available. So you start from the top and work your way down. So they're the chosen ones. You're the one for a better word.
Mr. Mayor, a major consideration is the fact that we look after the local councils.
So, none. So, sorry, just to be clear then, does this mean that we have to purchase all our tyres from, what's the recommendation? It's a thing, yeah, of those six, yeah, yeah, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Really, yeah.
We have the choice of those six.
Choice.
Yes, yes. So that the Division of Engineering Services then intimating that we will go out of our way, which is in our what, 5 or 10%, whatever, 5% to support locals. So that's a pretty reasonable result. Yeah, they're on the panel there, and that's good. So, thank you. Any further comments, questions? Before we put that? Okay, in case we put that, all those in favour, item 3, the Division of Engineering Services report. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to reports of the Division Manager of Health and the Manager of Health and Development. First one, for those being the Vacation Care Audit Report and Review. Okay, the recommendation there is that the council note the assessment and audit report completed on vacation care. Someone happy to move that recommendation? Councillor Certainty. Councillor Walker, thank you. Councillor Certainty.
Pretty much all in there. We've all our policies and all up to date. We've gone as far as we can. With regard to the policies, they're just the stock standard ones that come and we just put our bit and piece into it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, yeah.
They're usually pretty stock standard across the board. So happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Certainty. Yeah, look, the comment really is that, okay, we've been reviewed, need to get up to speed like we have had to in lots of our areas of our operations in terms of policies. That's happening. Good result. We just learned from that. Yeah. Anything further on item 1 of the Manager of Health and Development? Okay, guys, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 2, the report of the Manager of Health and Development, that being in regard to the Warren War Memorial Swimming Pool. Someone happy to move that, the recommendation there, in that the information received noted and the following project management strategies be implemented. Councillor Walker, happy to move that. Councillor, someone second, Councillor Sturdy. Councillor Walker.
Can we, is it to have a discussion on this item?
Yes. Yes. I mean, we can ask for more information. You can suspend standing orders.
Standing orders?
And ask. Yep. Okay. Noted that we suspended. Someone to second that we suspend standing orders. Councillor Sturdy, you happy to do that? Thank you. We've suspended standing orders. Councillor Walker.
I've read the report. I'm not really sure where to start because maybe we have not received probably enough information on what has been occurring other than what we hear out there, but it seems to me there was maybe the process needed just more communication occurring so that everybody was up to speed on what was going on, the issues that were going on, and if there was a problem, that there was some professional input required, because I don't think the staff can be over everything on this project. I mean, there was a whole new filtration system that was quite complex from what I can gather, and a lot of things seem to require some more input from outside people. So I think the recommendations of having a project management team formed is a good idea. A project plan, I think those points are very valid and pertinent to what's been going on in this particular project. And I think we need a workshop possibly on something like this if we have another project of this type, and it's a lot of money, that it's a process that we go through to make sure this doesn't happen again. And to learn from it, you know, you learn, and how could we have done it better?
I think my view is this is a particular project. I think lots of other projects we've seen have run extremely well. And so I'm not. So I think the capability is there within the organisation to run projects
I just
really
think
well.
this particular one, with everything that was new and very, from what I can say, quite here and see is quite technical. I think the filtration system is probably one area that we needed to have the people to make it and set it up. And I don't know if it occurred because we weren't told training and how do you work this thing.
I think my belief is the biggest stumbling block. We didn't have time to actually get it up and running. So what did happen? In my view, all the infrastructure in terms of filtration, etc., was in place. Problem was we couldn't fill the lot of water to then test that equipment. So the anticipated completion date of the internal part of the pool was the 9th of September. The internal part of the pool was not completed until the 13th or 14th of October. Whatever number of weeks behind there. The intention was to be completed by the 9th of September. You've got 3 weeks then to get the filtration equipment, etc., up and running. And that didn't occur. In hindsight, it wasn't enough time, but we would have been in a lot better place if, as per the time frame of the internal work on the pool, if that had been completed on the 9th of September, we were in a lot better place than the 14th of October. And I believe that is a significant factor in not achieving the outcome we wanted.
Right. Are people who are working at the pool, have anything to do with the pool and management of the pool, do they know how this filtration system now works?
But I'll defer to the general manager on that, but that is not the issue with the pool opening late.
We've obviously had issues with the system though, to get it right.
Right, because couldn't test it. 4 weeks plus a month late. I'll refer to the
Mr Mayor, in addition to that delay, the last lot of infrastructure to do with filtration went in 2 weeks ago as well. So there have been, pools are very difficult. And I've seen the photos. You open up a saw almost, you don't know what's there. And certainly what Mr Mayor's indicated is right. It's included in the report. You can see the Gantt chart there. But I started here on the 3rd of November, and I remember saying to the Mayor, we'll get the pool open by that weekend, following weekend. Now, obviously that hasn't occurred for various reasons, and one of them was we were understanding how the filtration worked. And of course, you have an operator, Wendy, and I don't know what her surname is. Stevens. Mrs. Stevens there, or Ms. Stevens. She hasn't been given the instruction on how to operate because we're still commissioning the new equipment. That will have to happen because the project manager of the greater part of that project won't be there. That job will be complete. So that definitely has to happen. Now, when you've got new equipment and you have a water quality issue, there are varying ideas. We've got new equipment. We're using a new media. We're injecting CO2, carbon dioxide gas, and it's just all different to what it was. And we have to make sure that the equipment performs, and then the training of the operator occurs. Now, Manager of Health and Development, has that occurred, or it will be? No. It's imminent.
It has not occurred.
Yeah, today. But it will have to occur in the not too distant future.
Just a question. So with significant projects like this, I mean, it's the sport committee that deals with this. Maybe in the future, there's more meetings, maybe to keep on top of. Maybe I don't know.
Meetings are held, and the Sport and Facilities Committee had a meeting up here. We were assured we're running on time as of September.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that was patently not correct.
So has anyone had their hands on the project plan for this? I mean, I think it was identified really early in the piece that there didn't seem to be a document that encompassed all of the work, and therefore there appears to be poor appreciation of the risks. Some of those were wildly unforeseeable. Situations like backwashing to the river, changing that to backwashing to sewer, obviously created some issues there, but with experienced project managers, they could foresee that there could be a possible, ask the question, will the sewer take it? In hindsight?
Yeah, in hindsight. Yeah.
Right, but clearly it could not. And that, that was a significant issue. I am aware of some layout issues with sheds and buildings and things like that where work had to be done and redone because there was no floor plans available for some of the trades and things like that. They're not big issues, but it's not like there was a plan rolled out that everyone could see exactly where they were going. The Gantt chart is for the painting of the pool only. The Gantt chart is a project management tool with a critical timeline, and that was for painting. So that's not a Gantt chart. That's what the painter might have used. So, of course we need to implement the project management infrastructure and processes in here. It seems like to me this is a knee-jerk reaction. It's a necessary one. A knee-jerk reaction to a project that ran off the rails and, we fell across the line, we were late and those sorts of things. Sure, the pool is an incredible asset now. It's cost us an absolute fortune to get there, and but we knew from the start this was going to be difficult because the flags went up when we couldn't get a tender to start with, and then we couldn't get anyone to really who had experience in these sorts of operations. We know from previous council histories that these pools were built in the 50s, post-World War II. that when we opened it up, there could be all sorts of tricks underground and things like that. And again, some of them are unforeseeable, but there was it didn't seem to be a risk analysis on any of these significant things. And we've run into, and it's a hugely complex project as well, I fully admit that. But, you know, we get to the end of this and we haven't had a set to work plan or a training plan. This is all, again, it's all knee-jerk stuff. And those blue filters have been sitting there for months. 12 months. Surely there could be another opportunity along that way to train staff at a different pool. We were not the first ones to use those things. Maybe that's not feasible, but, you know, we solved some problems in this. You know, there were recommendations to get tankers to backwash into trucks and things like that, and all these things were putting spot fires out that a contingency plan in a project management document would have identified as possible risks. So absolutely we have to do this. It's a shame that this is the project that has highlighted that to us. We've had some big projects in the past, obviously, that are not being run under project management conditions. They're just done by people who are handy at the stuff. You know, is that good enough?
I think the pertinent point, Councillor Brewer, is the overall plan so that everyone knew exactly where things were going and the time which they were having. I would have to say that we could have done that a whole lot better.
It should have been one project, painting and the outside work and credit control. I think the other issue is that perhaps the experience of some of the project team was not there, and you know that's been admitted, and I think there needed to be better control higher up, recognising that lack of experience, which wasn't there.
Yeah, a baptism of fire is not the way to learn project management.
Not on a pool, no, as well. Yeah, and that late in the season to get the pool up and running.
So how do you get around that problem if you do not have, if you perceive or you see that you don't have someone with the experience that will cover something, a project like this, and this might happen again, so how do you get around that issue?
You employ suitably trained either companies or individuals, depends how you want to run it, to undertake that activity. Now, we went out to, as I understand it, we went out to tender for the pool. We didn't select a tenderer, we chose to do it in-house. They're good, I suppose, but based on information at the time, that was a good decision. And yeah, it's difficult.
It was difficult. I mean, Bocor came with some pretty good recommendations when they were chosen as the people to do the internal servicing of the pool. Unfortunately, I believe they've let us down.
Well,
considerably. In that they were the people engaged to be the experts, correct? And the trouble is, we didn't have the expertise, particularly, to pick up exactly where the shortfalls were till it got a bit late in the day, and that's the issue.
And even, just leading on from that, we've since employed Bocor to do the splash pad. And I'm not saying that's bad, that's, you know, they're doing a great job down there, but, you know, on that performance, you have to, you know, ensure that the experience at that particular time doesn't occur the next time we use them.
Yeah.
Because we were dealing with I think it was that a subby on a subby?
Yes.
Yes.
And, you know, that's ridiculous.
Councillor Taylor.
Question on finances, it shows there about 32 grand over. Is that the final figure?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't answer that categorically at the moment. It's more than that, because I don't know the scope of work that need to be undertaken. I haven't been involved with I know for a fact that it's probably double that currently with orders that have been placed.
Yeah. Expecting to be off since that report.
So there is still some work happening down there, Councillor Taylor. I'm not sure whether it's part of the commitment or it's additional to that.
My belief there should, I think mental health development. There's not much work. I don't think there's much to be completed down there, is there?
I'm not savvy to that information. I don't know what space works
Oh,
remain.
And can I just add, Mr. Mayor, that I think the communication hasn't occurred either, from what I'm hearing, and certainly in my short time here, I haven't seen a lot other than asking the manager to put a post on Facebook or the emails out to councillors. We needed a comprehensive communication strategy on any of these types of projects, particularly when it was becoming obvious that we weren't going to meet the deadline.
There is a perception too out there that the one at the showground is that going to be finished on time and within budget. I mean, so this sort of rolls on because they've been bitten once. This is going to happen again.
Is that the horse arena or the
ground?
Okay.
The treatment.
There's a whole, again, there's a whole lot of moving parts there. There's, 9 different organisations and, Councillor Beach, sorry.
I was just going to make a quick comment and a question about the pool. I think, just a comment, I think it's, if it wasn't for the filter and the sewage, we would have got out of jail and it would have been a hugely different result. But, and the other question I have going forward is a concern, I guess, what I'd just like to ask, I guess, Mary Ann, Minister for Health, are there any potential blowouts in the next couple of years? I mean, is the lining, that's the issues that I see, that was the last thing at the end. That what's the problem? Can we have a blowout there? Is it something we should be looking at warranty, getting it back in to redo next season?
The General Manager will answer that question. I'll answer that question.
Councillors, I think it would be prudent to empty the pool again. My experience with pools, other than indoor pools, you do empty them every year because you don't want to keep the filtration system going throughout the winter if you're not using the pool. So you do empty it, and that's when you inspect the pool. You generally repaint the pool as a result of the work just being undertaken, and certainly alluded to in the report that under the warranty we will need to get in there and have a look to ensure that what we've paid for is what we've got. So that's a decision, well, I don't think I'll be here at that time, but that will need to be taken.
And I guess at the end of the day, that's our main concern now, isn't it, going forward? I mean, just going forward.
Sorry, can I just say that, my time down there, everybody's having a great time. They don't know, what's happened. Everybody's splashing and laughing, which is really positive. Yeah,
Sorry, Councillor Tarp.
Just the membrane, I just noticed in the sheet, it's got a 10-year warranty. So if we empty the pool after the season, expecting it's faulty, sure we can come back on them.
I think the issues relate to the construction joints or the cracks in the shell.
We didn't actually, did we place a membrane? No. So there's two different things there, Councillor Taylor. No.
It's fiberglass.
No. So what we paid was 129 or something, I think. Is that right? Fan construction, sorry.
Sorry, that's all.
Yeah. So that was the alternative. Sorry, was to actually put a membrane right inside the pool, which is something that may have to occur. But at this stage, our option there was 129 or so, whatever the number is, which I think is quite well. So that's what's occurred, but there's still, I think it's a 3-year warranty on that as far as.
That's correct.
Yes. So nonetheless, we will empty the pool, is my belief. We'll be guided by those who know much more than I, but empty the pool, see where we are at the end of the season, and so we can actually say to Vocal, you actually haven't provided us what we paid for, and we need to have that rectified. The other issue is, as the General Manager's alluded to, is we were getting Vocal themselves weren't within the rules of law of the place. There were subcontractors, and that was also part of the issue. Just the oversight and the quality control wasn't there. So it's just a whole, in my mind, a number of things have just added up to a big thing is the thing, and we need to be much better at it. There's no doubt about that. That's yeah.
And can I just lastly, probably plain, but this new sewage treatment plant, there is a committee set up. I think we've had, I don't know, I could count on one hand.
About 3 years ago.
We have not had a meeting concerning that, the progress,
Absolutely.
the budget, nothing. So it's repeating itself.
Yeah.
We can't keep doing this.
Taking it on board, Councillor Walker. Exactly. I agree.
We'll get better.
Councillor Higgins raised it with me on Monday, and I've spoken to the officer to ensure that there is a meeting in the next couple of weeks before Christmas. Because again, part of the information or the discussion with Councillor Higgins was around communication as well as the committee.
Okay. Anything further before we reinstate?
Well, we'd have a work, do you think, I don't know, to have a workshop on this? Is this an area that the councillors wanted? Or
My workers, we actually need to. I mean, the plans have been, it's all been a bit of a struggle. The plans went to Public Works initially, as you will all understand. We didn't have the in-house expertise. What are you talking about?
A general project management and how we go forward.
I think you should use the sewage treatment plant as a case study and just use that and say, okay, well, how are we going? And it went from a Public Works planning process to now in-house, and then broken down to a tenderer that we accepted a couple of meetings ago. So yes, but committee needs to be informed. But what comes out of the swimming pool is that even when the committee is supposedly informed, we're still not informed. We don't know enough. So I think it needs to get much better. Detail. Updates.
So, Mr. Mayor, whilst we're still outside the formal process, councillors, you might consider a point 3, just taking on what Councillor Walker's saying that a workshop can be held early in the new year or whenever you think is appropriate to discuss the project management principles and strategies utilised in significant projects or something like that.
I just think we need to look at how could it have been done better and learn from what's happened.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think if we as council understand how a project is managed, and we, sewage treatment plant, we probably need a time frame in front of us to really know, work started. So
I don't know what's
going on. Exactly. So I believe it would be a very valuable thing to do that, and sooner rather than later.
Because we've got big money happening out at the race course as well that we need to, the grant to keep on top of all that as well. Costing.
I think you've got to manage it. The racecourse, at least you've got a development committee there.
Oh, yeah, but we need to disband it.
It's going to be
The
the subcommittee. The development subcommittee, which was, so it was a sunset committee. But the thing is, we just need to, we as a collective need to be much more on top of and aware of what's going on. And I think we can ask our senior council staff to put us in that position. I do that?
Yeah,
right. So going back to what the general manager said, do you want to add Councillor Walker? Sorry, who was the mover of this, Councillor Walker? Walker, thank you. Certainly, was the two. Thank you. Councillor Walker, when we reinstate standing orders, do you want to add a third point there that we have a workshop to allow councillors to gain a greater understanding of project management, and that we use the sewage treatment plant as a case study?
Yes, 100%.
Because this will be a one-off, but there will be other projects, and we do need to get all of it. So if you're happy to move that way, when we reinstate standing orders. Okay. Good. So, Councillor Walker, sorry, is there any further discussion before we reinstate standing orders? No. Councillor Walker and Councillor Third, are you happy to reinstate standing orders? We need to move in a second. Yep. All those in favour? Reinstate standing orders. Thank you. Carried. Now, Councillor Walker, you have a recommendation, a third point to add to the recommendation regarding item 2 of the Manager of Health and Development report regarding the one Bournemouth swimming pool.
And what's up for you?
It's up on the board. Thank you. Thank you, Jared. Councillor Walker, you're happy with that? Councillor, secondly, Councillor Certainty. Yep. Do we need any further discussion, information before we put that? We've had a pretty fair discussion. But being in the case, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 3 of the Manager of Health and Development reports. That's been in relation to the construction of the 2 council houses. Someone happy to move that? Taking on board Councillor Bruce's assertion that she's not a structural engineer. She's keeping very. Someone happy to move that. No, sorry, I'm remiss too. I need to get the recommendation. It's very handy for you people behind us.
Well, isn't the big anything?
I'll bet no one thinks we get there. Sorry, I've got to move her. Oh, Councillor Brewer, second. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Brewer.
I'm happy to move the recommendation. It just appears that there are issues. I read these reports last night a couple of times over, and they're fairly complex. It certainly appears that there's issues potentially with the slab. That's a known. It used to be a swamp, so it's known to be reactive. And there are other houses with the same problems in that area. It's disappointing that it's got to this state when a lot of those measurements should have been made and the initial investigations were done on those spots, but they weren't. And we find ourselves with houses with cracks and slabs that have got water and up to 2 years for it to dry out and those sorts of things. So we can see all sorts of issues, and there are still issues in some of those houses in that estate area that are still happening.
Just recently, I've actually replaced 4 sewer lines on a house that's just sheared by 100 mil. Just dropped.
Councillor Brewer, sorry.
Yeah, so I think that a camera should go up in light of what we've just heard about sewers. There is a recommendation in there, I think, by one of these reports that a camera goes up the sewer and has a look at those to see whether there's moved and those sorts of things. So I think that we should be negotiating with the builders on this. I'm not really sure how speedy that's going to be to get a resolution, but maybe the General Manager can provide a comment.
Councillors, there are things still occurring in relation to, what's the number of your house? 8. House number 8, sorry, councillors. Yeah. What has occurred, and I don't know if you saw in the 2 reports, we had a structural engineer's report on behalf of the builder, and then we got ours now, different outcomes. So we have asked the 2 engineers to get together and come up with a common reason and also repair rectification works. I don't know that that's necessary. Well, I understand that the request has been made, but we haven't seen a report.
That's correct.
And what's happening now is that we need to get that report. Our structural engineer is really keen to get with the other person. The other thing that's occurring is that we have contacted the home owner's warranty.
That's correct, yes.
There is quite a lengthy process there, but we will certainly start that process. And there's a number of organisations to ultimately get...
Sorry, that's Department of Fair Trading.
Oh, that's right, Department of Fair Trading, that's right. And it ultimately could end up with the new building commissioner that has just recently been appointed as a result of Opal Tower and others in Sydney. So, but there is quite a lengthy process there. In the meantime, the keys, we're still holding some money. The keys haven't been given to us, and that in any event, if and when we do take the keys, we would be asking for an extended warranty, because part of our engineer's report says that both houses are certainly habitable, but give it 18 months to 2 years, I think it was, for time for things to occur so that rectification works can then be undertaken. And I think that's sensible. But as you would know, those of you that have built, generally warranty periods only cover 12 months. So we would be asking for an extension of that with Rotondo, and I don't know whether they would be accepting of that at all. In fact, I suggest that they wouldn't be, because right now they're not taking Mary Ann's calls. So that friction is starting to set in. But we will keep going with that. There are a number of other options. I firmly believe, and I know the house that I'm in, just opposite, I've got cracks in every window. I don't know, Councillor Taylor, what your house is like, but...
Off the pond, I have had cracks just recently through the drought. That's after 27, 28 years.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Just about every house I've worked in around there, which is quite a few of them, have moved, cracked.
Yeah.
It's just bad then.
Yeah.
No one local would have built a house there.
Rough slabs are really bad.
Yeah.
In the green and the
So
white.
anyhow, so we've got what we've got. The managers also requested, we were the authorising body for the works as well, so the manager has asked for the structural engineer's sign-off on the design and confirming that it is to Australian standards for the particular soil types. So it'd be interesting to see what comes back with that as well, because there might be an issue with Rotondo and their structural engineer. I don't know, but we're seeking that information. So it does continue, unfortunately. The house that we have taken over on inspection initially, it looked pretty reasonable. So we took the keys, we paid the money for that house. But since then, similar sort of movement within the house is occurring to what the house that we haven't taken over has undertaken. Other suggestions is to, if we accept that, it's the dishing of the slab, which is the moisture getting into the outside soil, expanding and pushing up the outside walls. And the reason that the inside doesn't push up is because the water hasn't gone in far enough. Now that sort of makes sense to me. And the suggestion is that we need to put a cut-off drain almost immediately adjacent to the slab so that any water, irrigation, particularly water, can't get into the soil underneath the slab. So there seems to be solutions. It's not that the houses can't be lived in. It's not a good look. They're brand new. You know, I wouldn't like to pay a lot of money and get a house like that. But yeah, you know, that's where we are.
Councillor Walker.
Yes, Mayor, is it going down the track? I believe, did we pass a motion for or recommendation for a house to be built but on piers like we're sitting on now, using piers in that state?
It was
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding of the report that went to council, if I recall correctly, is that we had to contribute additional funds because the design came back, needed to be increased in design because it was an E-site. Yeah, so.
I'm just wondering, is there a way forward that you don't have slabs and you have, is it better with piers that it has movement, can handle movement?
I think that happened with Mark Kelly's house, but he
This is
was going to
nothing-
build it.
Is that
And I thought it
possible?
was approved by then that he could actually build it up on.
Yeah, has he done that?
No, he's actually bought a house there.
Oh,
Yes, it's still there.
Okay, I think it's a matter for people as they get some experience here, perhaps talking to major development and understanding when they go through the DA process that they actually understand the reactivity of the soil. So they need to just over-engineer that part of it. And I know our project manager here has indicated that he would always use the screw piles that he's used here if he was building in that vicinity. I know nothing about building, but that's...
But is that a consideration that maybe if you move forward with this, that you have to use that method?
I think that's an individual's prerogative. We can't tell people how to build something.
And we rely on professional services giving advice for their proponent, the applicant. that everything's okay. And that includes electrical, plumbing, the whole works, because we don't have that expertise.
But if you were talking to someone who's building in that vicinity, Councillor Walker, you might just indicate they might be worth talking to some professional people just to get the best result. Yeah. That's by the way. Okay, so I think we've had a reasonable amount of discussion on this matter. Any further information sought before we put that? In the case, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to item 4 of the Manager of Health and Development report in relation to the development application regarding the demolition and rebuilding of the Calman Pavilion at the Warrenchaga Racecourse facility. So I'm happy to move regarding the DA application. Councillor Bruce, happy to move that. Councillor Higgins, happy to second. Councillor Bruce?
I think we probably discussed a bit of this prior, this year in the calendar, so yeah, I don't think we need to go through it too much.
Yep. Can I just defer to the last page, Councillor's page 35, and the Manager of Health and Development? I'm seeing, when I look at that, looking at the elevations, the east elevation appears on that drawing to have no doors. Is that correct? And it's only the west elevation that has doors?
That's correct.
So there won't be any access from the bar type area into the McCallum Pavilion from the grassed area.
Does that satisfy fire egress requirements then for a public building?
I don't know, Councillor Wilbur, but I'm saying it doesn't make sense. The existing door to the McCallum Pavilion is from the eastern side of the building. This building shows that door being on the western side, so you actually got to walk out to the front.
That's where they do the cabin, that side.
I think they really need to go back and have a look at their drawings before they start building something and saying, we've got it wrong here.
I'm not sure how it makes it burn proof when the doors are in.
For the show, for the P&A Society, but I believe that people would think that was a really foolish way to do it. That's the western. That's where people. There's a door you can't really see for the shed, for the tree there, but that's the access that people don't look at the show. You know, the bar area, showroom area, toilet area.
I'm just referring to the photos, councillors, under the engineer's report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can have a discussion with them on and clarify that issue.
Yeah,
because
it
we
doesn't
want to
make
get the design right.
it doesn't make any sense to me at all. They're showing the veranda areas on the eastern side. It makes sense, but
On that diagram up the top, the opening's on that side. It's just in the drawing down the bottom. See the opening there on the bottom there of the diagram?
yeah, but then do we know which is that? Also, where you right.
Top one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be the western side.
Is that even that north and south?
That could be, that's the western side.
This is the elevation here.
Yes, so that corresponds to that, which is the west. In here, it's got the covered veranda being on the west, which surely the goodness is on the east.
And they do utilise, they have utilised in parts that western area. Used to be a cattle.
Yeah, I mean, the cattle, but it's not. I think they
These to connect with both sides, so look at the west.
No.
I think, hey,
You look at west, that's what you're going to say.
it's that, he's trying to, but I believe Nature Health and Development, I think you probably need to go to the P&A and see exactly what they mean.
Yes.
The other point I would make is that when we're talking about the floor areas, at present water runs in from the present doors into the building. The floor area has to be at a height so that water doesn't drain into the building.
This is 100 millimetre of concrete.
At the moment, it's it's pretty ordinary if it rains prior to the show, because that grass area gets very wet and it's a constant puddle going in where the present doors are from the bar area, for want of a better term. The other point that hasn't been discussed is the demolition of the building. Yes, the building's demolished, then what actually happens to the building?
It's dismantled.
Dismantled. And
Stored on site.
And
It's up to council.
right.
Whatever we choose to do.
That hasn't been articulated, I believe, in what we've discussed today.
Right. No, the existing building is to be dismantled, Mr. Mayor, and stored on site until we determine what we want to do with that.
Again, we want to have it out of the road prior to the show 21. Yeah. Okay. And that's the P&As, they're aware of that.
Mr. Mayor, it was included in the WRL quotation.
Okay, that's fancy. It's not, okay.
For dismantling and removal.
Dismantling and stacking it because on site.
Because it's it's council's property, and we will, do with it then as the general manager. We'll have to make a decision. Probably, actually, the idea would actually be making some sort of decision about what we're going to do it, so that it doesn't disappear from the site in one way or another. Almost immediately as it's been taken down. Let's deal with it. So sorry, going back to the DA application, sorry, which we're getting a little bit sidetracked. Someone happy? Sorry, is there any further information required? Accepting that, I believe that we need to the P&A Society needs to liaise with the Manager of Health and Development and be certain that what they've got planned here, what they're showing on their plans, is actually what they want to build. I think that they're on that. My viewing has some serious shortcomings.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to add a motion just to ensure that the General Manager discuss the orientation or the location of the doors associated with the building
and the height of the floor?
And the height of the floor.
Yeah.
To ensure
the practical use of the building.
Right, that the building can be used as intended.
So who's the mover of that?
Councillor
Bruce. And second it was
Councillor Higgins.
Councillor Higgins. Councillor Bruce, Councillor Higgins, are you happy to add to those 2 points? The P&A Society liaise with the General Manager regarding the orientation, egress, ingress points in the building, and the second one that they also liaise regarding the floor height of the building with the General Manager. Okay. Yeah, that's a planning matter. Thank you. Thank you, Manager of Development. So we do need, for this one, we do need a show of hands when we put this. Is there any further information or discussion before we actually put item 4? There being nothing, I'm happy to put that, and I'll require you all to have a show of hands. All those for? Against? Carried unanimously, no dissent. Thanking you, Councillor Flato. Moving on to the remaining items. Item 8, we have no notice of motions or questions without notice. There are no matters of urgency, no confidential matters. There is the conclusion of the meeting. Just prior to that, the General Manager and I had discussion again yesterday regarding reports. Can we just have a quick discussion? Is that appropriate in here or not? Let's conclude the meeting and have a discussion. Yep. It's just it prompted me by that, what I'm seeing in conclusion of the meeting. In that case, we'll close the meeting and we'll just have we'll declare the meeting closed now. Thank you.